What's going on, guys? Sam Brown here at elitefts with Tony Montgomery, bringing you one of the most hated exercises on the planet.
Yeah.
Right? So we get a lot of questions about how to get a bigger squat, and we got some bad news for you today. This is the exercise that will help your squat get bigger, and it's Dave Tate's favorite exercise.
Potentially, right? Like, there's a lot of nuances to everything when it comes to this type of stuff. But when you're thinking about lower body accessories, you want to think about what are the weaknesses, what are the needs of the lifter. Do they need more function within their movement patterns, or do they need something that's going to create more muscle action, right? So we want to think what exercises are going to allow us to have external stability so that we can really load muscle action, and which one's going to allow us to bring more internal stability so we can think about muscle function, and then how can we integrate that into a system seamlessly, right? Because we want to be able to have function within movements, but we also want to be able to have as much output as possible to create as much of a hypertrophy stimulus as we can. So when it comes to like a split squat or a Bulgarian split squat, we want to think, well, which one's actually going to do what, right? And so to answer that, we'll have Emma kind of demonstrate so you guys can get a conceptual idea of it, is the idea of unilateral work with a split squat, right? Go ahead and step over that and get into a split squat position.
Just on the floor.
Yep. So this is going to allow for a little bit more stability, right? Because her foot's not up, she doesn't need to balance. So this one may be allowing her to load a little bit more. She can have more load. She can focus more on whatever muscle she wants to focus on. So if she does want to do more quad work when she does a split squat, if she just allows that front knee to travel as much as she can while she's on her way down, that's going to elicit more quads, and she can stay in that area because she has that stability to do it. If she wants more hamstrings, she can lunge more down and back, right, where that shin's going to be more vertical, and that's going to create more optimal output. So you're allowed to distinguish between which ones you want. And if you want to even do more stability, right, grab the bar, right? She can have one there, and then she can have a dumbbell in the other hand. This is going to provide optimal stability, so she doesn't have to worry about any type of balance and any type of stability. She can really load that dumbbell up or that hand up with whatever weight she wants and really focus on trying to isolate that quad or isolate that hamstring as much as she can on the way down.
Now, question.
Yep.
We get a lot of people that are not fans of single leg work, right? If I want to build my squat, can I just do more squatting? Can I just squat more?
Sure, you definitely can, but you have to understand like the benefits we're going to get out of a single leg exercise. So something like a split squat, if you look at some of the literature, right? If you do a split squat and you're in the bottom position for anywhere from 20 to 30 seconds, that has very analgesic effects to you, meaning that you're going to release a lot of knee pain. So if you want to get rid of knee pain that could be hindering your ability to squat, this is going to be a great way to do that with some isometric holds at the bottom. Or if you lack stability within your pelvic region, right, having that split squat variability in there is going to allow you to stabilize more in your pelvis. So if you can stabilize your pelvis better, then you're going to be able to squat more weight because you're going to have more force production because you're able to brace better, you're able to stabilize everything a lot better. And then if you really want to think about, well, does the squat isolate the quads? Does the squat isolate the hamstrings, or does it work in unison, right? Are squats the premier muscle builder that we want for our legs, or is it better to isolate them and try to focus on internal drive, internal cueing, right? Because when we think about performance, we're thinking about external cueing. That's going to drive performance as much as we can. But if we think about how can we get our legs bigger, that's going to be more internal. And internal cueing is going to be something that you want to do when you're in a stabilized position, not so much where you have to internally stabilize. So a split squat loaded is going to give you better opportunities to have hypertrophy within those legs than it would be if a squat was doing it. Even though the actual load and the tonnage is going to be more in a squat, that's not able to necessarily isolate the muscles that you want to isolate. And you look at some of the research they just put out, they took 4 quad exercises and they saw that certain ones started to elicit more muscle activation within the rectus femoris, within the VMO. So there are some truths to the fact that you can pick exercises and isolate muscle groups as opposed to people thinking that they just work all the time in unison. So that's the thing that you're going to get out of the single leg stuff, is it's going to build stability, it can take away some knee pain, and it's a better hypertrophy driver than a squat would be because you're able to now elicit where you want those adaptations to go. And then if you're thinking about which ones to load, like we said, the ones that require external stability, you can really load those up. But if you're doing a Bulgarian split squat, which you want to demonstrate for us real fast?
I'd love to.
So this is something that you're not going to want to load. If you look at some of the stuff that Mike Boyle puts out where he does a lot of single leg work with hockey players and Cal Dietz, they really don't load this much, because if you're loading stuff in this fully stretched position at the bottom, that can cause a lot of hip pain, that can cause a lot of issues within the hip, right? But you can focus on doing this. So when you see her going down, if you're paying attention as a coach, you can see if her hips are shifting one way or the other. If her hips are starting to shift, that's telling you that she's relying too heavily on maybe one adductor, one glute med, one glute max, right? So those are things that they're going to give you more indices of like what you need to work on as a coach that can make your squat strong, as opposed to maybe this will, if you're going to build your squat, research shows that if you squat, your squat's going to get stronger more so than anything else. But this is going to be something that's going to be injury prevention. It's going to be more hypertrophy. It's going to be less fatigue, so you're able to train a little bit more often, and then that can elicit a better squat eventually over time. So we want to think about how can we cash in our chips and pick the right exercises, because we can't just squat for 15 sets. We got to be able to pick exercises that don't require as much fatigue, that fix some of the injuries and help prevent some of those injuries, so that when we do squat, there's no pain, there's no shifting, there's no imbalances. So that's where these exercises come in for.
And just like we kind of went over with your warm-up and with the breathing, you can utilize unilateral or single leg work as that diagnostic tool, like you had mentioned. And that's something that you have been preaching quite a bit, is the fact that everything has to be in the program for a reason, right? You can't just do things just to do things. I mean, you can, but realistically,
you're wasting time if you do, right?
Yeah. Wasting a lot of time. And the idea is that in your own trainings, you can utilize these exercises as tools to figure out what direction to take your training, what you need to focus in on next, and just little things that you need to work on.
And you can also use it as an indicator, like if you're squat, right? If you're doing a squat and your knees are buckling in, maybe you need more stability. So then that's going to mean that whenever you pick a single leg exercise, it's going to be a Bulgarian split squat. But if you're squatting and your technique's always good and you just don't have the muscle mass to move the weight, then you want to pick an exercise that's going to require external stability, like the split squat, right? So even your main movement is going to elicit what accessories you want to choose as well, whereas your accessories can help build up that main movement. So they work in unison quite well.
Awesome. So let's go over let's go from the easiest version to the most difficult version. Just for everybody at home can kind of see where they can kind of find themselves if they're new to this, or if they're more advanced, what they can do.
So go ahead and demonstrate again. We're going to the split squat. That's going to be the easiest one. Now, if you have someone that's a true beginner and they can't do a split squat, having 2 PVC pipes in their hand to create that stability, right? Because you're going to have stability here, which is going to not allow you to tip. But as soon as you take those away, then you have to require a little bit more stability. But a split squat's going to be the first thing. That's going to be the least advanced. And then from there, you're going to go into a Bulgarian split squat. And all that's going to require you to do is just lift your back leg. And if your back leg is lifted, right, that's going to require more stretch, which is going to require more pelvic stability. So you want to really focus on that. And then you can load these differently as well. If you want to do more, say you have someone that is having shoulder pain or hip pain, right, you want to think contralateral loading, which means wherever that front leg is out, the opposite hand's going to load. So we think about things as working in a sling pattern. If you've read anatomy trains, right? So the right shoulder connects to the left hip. So if they're having left hip issues and maybe having right shoulder issues, they can do some dumbbell work with that there to elicit some of that. Or you can do ipsilateral with here, right, to get more glute med. So it just depends on where they're at, what they need, where the dumbbells are going to go. And then after that, the next elevation would be to have your front foot elevated in a Bulgarian split squat manner, right? So she could have her front foot elevated 2 inches, 4 inches, but it's going to be the same setup as the Bulgarian split squat. And then from as far as like load selection goes, you're going to do single arm or you double arm load with dumbbells is going to be the easiest because that creates stability. Then you can go single arm, then you can go Zercher. And when you do the Zercher, that's going to create more pelvic stability. That's going to put you in a more upright position. So it's going to be more synergistic to carrying over to your squat. And then those are kind of the progression patterns. I always start people in the lowest form that they can start with and then progress them up. You never want to start someone with the hardest exercise and then tell them, oh, you suck. Now we're going to have to go back down to work our way back up, right? So that's when you pick some of those things. Like if you get somebody with a walk and lunge in their warm up, you're going to be able to see, does that person have balance within their lunge? If they don't have balance within a bodyweight lunge, should they be doing a Bulgarian split squat? The answer is going to be no. We're going to regress them to PVC pipes where they have the most ability to start checking off wins and making the training actually fun and not so much failure provoked.